Shall I wait for another 2 minutes? Host, can I start now?
Yes, it's okay.
Dear all, welcome to the UAE Hackathon and the live session on AI for Livability. My name is Basha Mukherjee. I lead the advanced analytics practice for SaaS across Middle East and Africa, and also pursuing my doctorate in climate risk from Rennes School of Business. Once again, welcome to the session. Today's topic is AI for livability. The agenda is here as follows. What is the concept of livability? I'm sure some of you know what is the concept of livability, just to reiterate and understand for the sake of others, the 5 pillars of livability. The AI ecosystem, the AI as we see is how we believe AI works, not just disjointed sets, but hand in glove together, and sample use cases on AI for livability. You can post your questions on the chat window, and I can take it once I complete my session. So let's start with the concept of livability. The concept of livability and this is not a very new concept. When we're talking to anybody right now, you're visiting any place, any location, any part in the world, right? You want to feel safe, you want to feel secure, you want that things to be affordable, affordable housing, medical, transportation, jobs, a feeling of community among diversity. That is basically the concept of livability, which fosters citizen or residents' engagement with the country or the city or the locality, and help them prosper in a personal way, as well as prosper the country or the region as well. So, and I hope you must be visiting a lot of expo shows, and you will see the concept of sustainability. So sustainability is also, livability is also a part of the sustainable cities concept. Interestingly, Economic Intelligence Unit defines livability index, and it's based on 5 pillars. The first pillar being of stability in terms of feeling safe and secure. The second pillar being in terms of healthcare, access to doctors, access to medication, the quality of healthcare. Then you have culture and environment, where adjusting to the local temperature and humidity, the interactions, the freedom, type of sporting capabilities, cultural events, goods and services, the convenience of doing business, all that will come under cultural event. Then comes your infrastructure, the quality of the road network, easiness and availability of the public transport, housing, what are the kind of housing accommodations available, and the quality of those. Apart from that is the utilities, what we call it as energy, water, and telecommunications. And of course, the final one is on the education, the quality or availability of the education. So our focus for today's session is on one part of the livability, that is on the infrastructure side. We're going to talk more on the infrastructure and how AI can enhance the livability standards if applied on the infrastructure side. So we'll talk about public transport, road network, housing, some of the use cases around that, and how we will see how from data, technology, the AI, and the decisioning and the impact. But before we get into those use cases, let's talk about what we understand from an AI is. Or what is the AI ecosystem? And this is very important to understand. Now, when we talk about AI, we normally think about AI as doing a data ops, ETL transformations, building models, and doing maintaining those models, right? And most of the time we talk about predictive models or basically forecasting capabilities. But if I look into the whole AI ecosystem, the AI ecosystem basically is fairly large than what we think, and they interact with one another. Interact with one another in the sense, as you know, the data, the journey starts with the data. Now, the data is coming in any form. The data can be unstructured, structured. The data can be videos, images. From databases, you're pulling out the data. And then when you pull out the data, you need to do some kind of transformations, do a data quality check to look for errors, anomalies, missingness in the pattern, and then feed the data for a data discovery or a visualization to understand the data, the basic statistics around this. Now, depending upon the use case, you may be using a plain Jane, plain vanilla statistics for machine learning, or some deep dive into deep learning capabilities. Or depending upon the use case, you may use forecasting capabilities or optimization capabilities, or even computer vision, machine learning, or processing the text, understanding the trends from the text, extracting information in any kind of in any language, be it English, Arabic, or your host country language, to understand the customer sentiments, to understand, extract information, or categorize the text. So now all this journey part, now once you have built a model, this is, let's call this as developing the models after you have done the managing the data cycle. Now, once you develop these models are still in a development environment, and these needs to be deployed, right? So once either you're deploying it on a streaming data set, like a live video telling you how many people are there, whether they're wearing a face mask or not, or you are understanding from the Twitter, the customer sentiments, what people are talking about, or what's trending. So these deployment can be either happen in batch or in database or in streaming mode. And based on these deployments, you're going to take, or the policy makers are going to take some decision, or the executive body is going to take some decision to have data for good or social good. So what I call is as the 3 N's in practice. 3 N's becomes your mining the data, for monetizing, or monitoring. So the monetizing can be from a perspective of both private and public good. So this is what the ecosystem is all about from an AI perspective. And these interact with each other. If I have done a forecasting, I'm trying to do an optimization in most of the cases. Or if I'm doing a machine learning activity, my end objective is to make a decision on the top of the modeling results. And similarly goes in the case of natural language processing. So my end objective is always a decisioning and to understand the impact from the AI, of the responsible AI. And these models, one critical factor is these models needs to be maintained, trained, maintained over a period of time to see how they are performing. So this is the whole AI ecosystem. Moving on to the use cases that integrate some of them or all of them, and from a livability perspective, and under livability from the infrastructure perspective of livability. So the use cases that I have chosen based on my experience in this region and some of our use cases that we have implemented. The very first is on the visual pollution and customer complaints. Then second is using IoT for detecting road repairs, public transport utilization and others. and building fire risk.
I think your mic is not working. Please check your mic again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's working.
So when I'm talking about AI for livability, I'm looking into 4 use cases that we are taking. And these use cases are related to the infrastructure part. When I'm talking about infrastructure in terms of either public transport or road network or housing. So these are the 3 aspects that I'm looking for this use cases. So moving on to the first one, that is visual pollution and customer complaints. Though they are 2 different, but I've tried to integrate them in one based on whatever we see and experience from customers. I hope you understand what the visual pollution is. But just to reiterate, like visual pollution is anything which does not appeal to the eye and creates a negative impression. So the aesthetics around our surroundings, which may not appeal to the eye and also create a negative emotion, is what we call as visual pollution. Obviously, this can include anything like which some examples that have been given is like street furniture, dumping the street furniture, furniture on the street, cables over intersections among buildings, or graffitis on bus stands or the walls, and definitely these dirty cars. These create a negative impression. Plus, I'm trying to integrate these images, this data in images that can be loaded through an app or sending it over the social media. We can also learn from the customer complaints to municipalities that if there is a water logging in my area, if there's a fallen tree, the garbage not clean, the street lights not working. So they can be, these are the calls that are made to call centers and they can be transcribed and taken as for natural language processing. So basically, when we talk about AI in context of livability and the context of infrastructure, under context of surroundings or housing, quality of housing surroundings, that's where AI can help. So the computer vision and machine learning can basically classify them whether there is a graffiti or not, or there's a cables or intersection or not, what people have dumped over there, and also to understand from the natural language processing that can we understand what is the particular problem, can I classify the problem and look into what are the trending problems in their area. For example, during rains, the water logging may increase. So can I dedicate more resources towards that to remove the water logging problem, or I can alert the drivers in that area to avoid any accident. Can I also report any kind of report incidents for fixing the street lights? So all this basically leads to your decisioning and impact, in the sense that when you have a no visual pollution city or a locality or a neighborhood, it is perceived to be a positive image of the city, and I'm sure people can relate based on their travel experience across the world. It also boosts your investor confidence that there is better law and order, that the country or the city is properly maintained, and that invites investment from foreigners and other governments. Plus, when you talk about solving the customer issues regarding the municipal problems, this also leads to customer happiness and increases the livability score of a particular location, city, or a country. So this was more from the housing part, if I'm talking about infrastructure and the livability. Moving on to the next one. This is one interesting thing. Using the IoT or Internet of Things, either in garbage trucks or buses for detecting road or road sign repairs. This comes as a part of quality of road network under infrastructure in livability. So an AIoT or analytics for IoT is playing a large role. So the cameras are fit on top of.
I think you have some issue in your mic connector. The board is hesitating, so check the connector. It's buffering sometimes.
Yeah. Can you hear me now clearly?
Yes, it's stable and very clear.
So basically what I'm talking about is the AIoT technology, the AIoT analytics for IoT. And analytics for IoT is being used to understand not only capture data, but also use AI on top of the captured data to understand any kind of road repairs, pavement repairs, or road signage damage, bus shelter damage. And since these assets move very frequently across the city, they're able to capture the data instead of us doing a repetitive exercise. And through computer vision and machine learning, basically we can do the object tracking, we can understand the damage, whether there's a damage or not, and we also understand the extent of the damage in order to allocate funds for damage repair. So if I talk about what can be done using AIoT to increase the livability index or the quality of road repairs, using this data plus 5G technology and AI, it can reduce the overall time to identify and fix the document, help municipalities to respond faster to assets that need maintenance, and remove the costly activity of doing this exercise over and over again and set up and reduce the load on the people and on the budget. Another example very similar to this is use of AIoT for public transport utilization and betterment. And I've shared an example from one of our pilots that where we were trying to understand from a live camera view of an airline that whether the airline is or the aircraft is stationary, whether their baggages are loading or unloading, how many people are boarding the aircraft or unboarding the aircraft, whether there's a fueling going on and there's a ground power or not. So use of data and 5G technology similar to this, what I'm showcasing in aircraft, can be used in buses or trams to understand, identify the object tracking, and then the data being generated from them to use for a lot of the decisioning and impact analysis. For example, if I'm using this technology in a bus and tram, I can understand the capacity utilization of the bus and tram during various hours of the day and how they can be used for forecasting capabilities. How we can understand that people of determination use those services and how we can provide better services to people of determination. Same from a public safety perspective, can we use to understand whether there's a face mask detection technology to make people aware or have a social distancing policy around that. Not only this, we can also have predictive bus maintenance to avoid ad hoc breakdowns, as well as bus route optimization in order to understand or serve larger areas in a short period of time. So you see, when I defined you or showcased you the whole AI ecosystem, everything is coming into picture. I'm taking leverage of computer and machine vision capabilities. I'm taking care of using 5G capabilities, and then I'm forecasting I'm using it for public health and safety or maintenance or optimization, or all these technologies are basically help us help the policymakers or the operation units make a decision and create an impact. And my last use case is from the building risk assessment. Now, from a building risk assessment, the use case that we have done is to understand in a country or in a locality which buildings are under the most risk of fire. Now, basically collecting data around the population demographics, whether they are single parents, what is the unemployment rate, breaking down that in the geographical areas, what is the type of land use, it's a residential, commercial, or a mixed use, what kind of lifestyle data, any historical incidents, then different fire measures, either the stairs are inside or outside, and past prevention activities being taken, all these being taken to understand or create an AI model to predict where the fires can be most occurring, and in most cases is the accidental dwelling fires. And the risk assessment, the decisioning and impact of these is basically assessment of the risk of different buildings and prioritize them as per the risk category, development of mitigation programs for these buildings, and ultimately the goal is to prevent fire and save lives. And this can also be supplemented with the 5G technology, what we call as AIoT. So in summary, when we're talking about all of these 4 use cases, basically we are leveraging the whole AI ecosystem around this to make an impact. And this whole AI ecosystem, what we're talking right now, is for just this area, this part, this section of livability, what we call as infrastructure. So we talked about the quality of the road networks, the quality of the public transport. Somewhere we touched around the quality of good quality housing. So you see the AI and its ecosystem, how it facilitates. In the examples, we just seen only the infrastructure aspect, but can facilitate other aspects of the livability index and help increase the livability score of any city or a country. So that's what I have for today's presentation. A very short presentation, but I hope it helps how AI can be leveraged as a part of this exercise just for livability perspective. If you have any questions, please post, and I can take those questions and answer it over this session. Host, can you let me know if there are any questions? Host, I'm done with my session. If there are any questions on the chat window, I can take them or I can answer them separately. Okay, I understand there are no more questions. Thank you for attending the session. And if you have any questions, do post it in the chat window. I'll be happy to answer those. Thank you.